Welcome, friends, to another edition of Bad Movie, Worst Game, where we review a bad movie, or in this case, a bad movie, and also talk about its corresponding games that came around that same time. So last time we did this with Cool World, the oft-forgotten 1992 animated film that also had some games that came around the same time.
That's correct.
In this case, we're going to be talking about, Nick...
The Last Action Hero. And it's funny enough, we're keeping it like in the mid to early 90s.
Yeah, of course. And actually, this is actually a step up from Cool World, which Cool World had a 4% on Rotten Tomatoes, 4 or 3%. And this actually is a big step up with 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. So you could say universally that it's kind of considered bad, I guess. And before we actually get into what we think about the movie, let's just give a quick synopsis of the plot. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is the star of this movie, and he's basically, as the title suggests, an action hero. And then there's also a child actor, which is kind of a kiss of death for any movie. And this kid is really into movies. He watches a lot of movies. His favorite actor is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays Jack Slater in these film of movies. So eventually he gets a golden ticket, he gets sucked into the movie, he becomes part of the movie, and that's actually where this actually gets a little interesting, because the kid knows he's in a movie, so he starts talking about movie cliches, movie
tropes of some sort.
Yeah, so it's kind of a parody on action movies. And that's where actually it gets a little interesting, because they're allowed to do some fourth wall breaking. And has there been a movie in the last year that's come out that's had some fourth wall breaking moments?
I guess we could say Deadpool.
Exactly. And that was a huge success.
This movie was a little bit ahead of its time, really. I mean, this was you can call it like a meta action comedy, more of like a straightforward parody of like action movie cliches.
Yeah, and it even poked fun of itself. I mean,
yeah.
You walk into a video store at some point and you see Sylvester Stallone on the cover of Terminator 2 because...
That was great.
Yeah, and just seeing that for the first time, especially in like the mid-90s, there was definitely some moments of, oh shit, I can't believe they're acknowledging this stuff like it's real, which
Yeah.
it is, obviously. And then a bunch of shenanigans happens in the movies. There's a bad guy, a.k.a. Tywin Lannister, Mr. Benedict. So they do a lot of movie jumping. They go back and forth. The bad guy comes into the real world. Arnold, which is Jack Slater in movie world, comes into the real world.
It's actually Jack Slater. I want to...
Jack Slater, yes, thank you. Yeah, Jack Slater. You're actually a fan of this movie, so
yes.
you would know best. So then Jack Slater comes in. They chase each other around. There's an epic climax in the end, and boom, done. One flop later, and everybody hates this movie. So why did this movie fail? I think I saw a few reasons online. Is that one, it came out a week after Jurassic Park, which
that they say that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah, which is R.I.P.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it was the next movie that Arnold did right after Terminator 2, which is kind of tough to follow up. I mean,
yeah.
No matter what he would have done, I guess he would have been kind of critical of it. And then three, like I said, child actor will ruin any movie if done incorrectly.
I don't know, John Connor wasn't that bad. I don't know what this kid, he was just...
Oh yeah, it works sometimes with The Sixth Sense and Terminator 2, but so if you find the wrong kid, Anakin Skywalker, or in this case, whatever this kid is. The final financial loss for this movie was around $26 million, at least that's what I saw online, and probably 1993 money, which was a lot more.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, I don't know if it didn't kill Arnold's career, but it was definitely one of his first, blemishes, I suppose.
That's fair to say.
I think that one of the things that I thought was a missed opportunity in this was the ability. They did a little bit of this towards the end as it's leading towards the finale where they jump across movies. It's like, you guys couldn't do something more creative with jumping into movies and pulling characters out, kind of like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where they go in the past and then they bring back Socrates and Abraham Lincoln and stuff. And they couldn't do something like that where they went into different movies and incorporated that.
Well, that's funny that you bring that up, because if I think of something like that, it was the time when Benedict starts mentioning how he wants to pull out certain horror movie characters.
Yeah.
And when he mentioned Freddy Krueger, as a kid, that sent a chill down my spine, and I was almost excited at the same time too, because I was like, is he really going to show up in this movie? Things like that. I thought that was very interesting that they could have, if somehow they were able to make the license work for that to take off and have those cameos going, that would have made the movie even crazier.
Yeah, because especially during the mid '90s, crossovers didn't exist. They just people talked about it, like fanboys and nerds talked about it, but it just didn't exist. Not like now, where Spider-Man's appearing in Marvel movies and all this craziness, and Freddy vs. Jason and Alien vs. Predator and all that nonsense. Just crossovers never happened. So the fact that like, oh shit, could this actually happen? And no, of course it doesn't.
But
so I just thought that was a missed opportunity with that.
Yeah, well, the only thing we did get was a pre-superhero in Ian McKellen as Death.
Yeah, I saw that. He popped out of nowhere towards the end. And I was like, what? Okay.
But even then, like, you really didn't have a good idea of what they could have taken advantage of. So, I mean, but it was, a fair attempt.
Yeah, so the whole point of the series is talk about the movie, which was considered bad, which I kind of liked. I remember liking it in '93 when I saw it, and I remember liking it now when I saw it recently. And I really didn't understand why people were shitting on it so much. And the last thing I want to mention about the movie is, what is your favorite cameo in the movie? Because there was a lot of cameos that just popped out of nowhere.
There really was a lot. I mean, I can't really say that it would be Charles Dance because, like, that was the first time I ever saw him. Personally.
And that's a retro cameo, which, by the way, he was a good bad guy in that movie. I'm happy that now he's getting his proper respect for being Tywin Lannister.
Yeah, I guess the Jean-Claude Van Damme appearance was pretty good. I mean, but it was like a self-aware thing. He wasn't really a character. He was like himself.
Yeah, it was just a cameo popping in. Yeah, it's a toss-up between Little Richard and MC Hammer popping in for a few lines. So it's a toss-up between that. So, did you have anything else to cover about this movie? Because I know you really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much covered everything, to be honest. The movie is so campy, so hokey sometimes with some of the delivery and lines, but like just the execution in the style that the film was made and like just the idea and concept, I just thought it was very unique for its time. And I think if they made something like that today, I think they would have been probably a little bit more well received.
Just look at Deadpool. If you would have come out with that and then even made it rated R and not have some kid actor in the movie, I think it would have been really good.
Yeah, absolutely. But enough about that. Really, we should probably make our transition over to the game portion.
Yeah, the only bad part about this is, man, these games. Whew. I played the Genesis version, and you played the Super Nintendo version and Nintendo version, actually, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So let me just start off with the Genesis version of, man, which you can, by the way, you can check out our playthrough of all this
below
on our YouTube channel. Yes, below. And man, it was just the art was bad. I mean, the character in the game, Jack Slater running around, had dark hair. It's like, no, Arnold is a blonde Austrian guy. You couldn't even at least get that right.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing there's a few things I could probably give some perks on for this game. Is the animation was actually halfway decent for the characters, and they had him dressed appropriately. That jacket,
the trench coat, and a red shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just the Genesis version. I don't know about the Super Nintendo, but the Gen was fucking hard. I couldn't get past the first area. I got to the second area, and then I died, and I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this. There was just bullets that kept coming off screen. It's like your punches weren't long enough. The people with the bats.
Had a longer reach.
Yeah, had a longer reach in your punches and kicks. And then the kicks were too slow, and then the bullets kept coming off screen. And the thing I hated the most was the invincibility time.
Yeah.
In all these old school games, you get hit, you have at least 1 or 2 seconds of invincibility where you can go around and kind of regather yourself. In this one, it was literally half a second. You'd get hit, and then you'd be okay for half a second, then you'd get hit again, and then you'd lose a life, and then boom, you're dead.
I was watching your video, and it looked very frustrating, and it was a similar experience to me. I didn't even get past the first level, so I was just like, well, fuck it. Music was so bad.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It didn't even have, like, some generic, like, guitar riff. It sounded, like, out of place, your music.
Very, very. And then the art was kind of bad, too, like, as far as the backgrounds and then the enemies. It was just, black and purple, basically, everywhere.
Yeah.
Terrible. So needless to say, I didn't get very far in it because it was frustrating. And I would have been... Can you imagine being a kid, like, getting one game every 6 months, one game even a year for some people, or whatever the case may be? And then you tell your mom or your dad, like, hey, I really want to get this. And then you open it and then you play it. Like, how disappointed this would be.
Yeah, and then getting yelled at if you ask to return it, and then you're just stuck with it at that point.
This can ruin childhoods.
Yeah.
Legit.
Absolutely.
Terrible. So what about the NES version? Was that any better than either of these?
Strangely enough, I want to say that it might be better than your game. Now, it took stills from the movie, like as far as like what they were trying to transition to, what were probably considered today's cutscenes, which was only like a still of the movie and like some dialogue.
They had that in the beginning of the Genesis game where they gave a little brief
but
plot analysis.
The difference between yours and mine is like they did like artwork for yours, like they did like in-game artwork for it, whereas like they actually took a still from the movie. Now, granted, it wasn't the best resolution, but it was a still from the movie.
Yeah, no, I'm sure for the time that would have actually looked pretty cool.
It would have been good for the game, and really they kick it off with the Ripper. Like they kick it off with him, like, and they said some kind of text, like I guess he's holding Jack Slater's son, and making the way. It was like, you know, your standard beat 'em up, but it was literally like you could only move one direction, like left or right. Like that's all you could do.
Which the Super Nintendo and Genesis versions were kind of beat 'em ups too, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't have life bars, the enemies, you just punched them like 2 or 3 times and then they died. But yeah, it was I guess a pseudo beat 'em up. What it was trying to. It looked like somebody made it in like 3 months. Just like one person made the whole thing. The music, the background, the programming, everything. It was just so bad.
Yeah, it was. They really took it to another level with mine. Like it was almost like Nightmare on Elm Street-esque, as far as apparently like right after I beat the Ripper, in which he turns into magical dust afterwards, and you don't see his son and
of course
or Jack Slater's son. Like it was really off the wall. Like the next level I go into like a Hamlet like scenario where I'm fighting like medieval people.
That makes sense. Maybe the Genesis and Super Nintendo versions get to that later. Maybe, I don't know. The game is too hard to actually find out. But maybe they do go into Hamlet or go into something else, because that would make sense for a game. You're going through the movies. So.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, like I was having like some true technical difficulties with my recording, or else I probably would have gotten farther.
Mm-hmm.
But that was about as far as I got.
All right, so with that being said, what would you say is worse? The game, in this case, or the movie?
Without a doubt, like no hesitation, the games were worse. I mean, you couldn't... Maybe today they could probably whip up something pretty good for it, but back then, just with the limitations and what I guess whatever ideas they had, just was not going to work out for this movie.
To quote the immortal Macho Man Randy Savage, 1,000,000%. The games were worse in every way possible. They're just not fun, bad. You would have been disappointed if you would have rented it from Blockbuster, or if you would have been unfortunate enough to buy it. You would have been disappointed either way. The character, Arnold, Jack Slater, looks nothing like the person in real life other than the trench coat and the red shirt. The gameplay is hard. It doesn't make sense as far as the difficulty level, and it's just not fun. So the movie, on the other hand, is fun. I like it. It's definitely watchable even to this day.
Oh, without a doubt. I would highly recommend it. I believe I even saw an article from AV Club that I think it was like released a couple years ago, that even though this movie was technically a flop, definitely worth revisiting today.
So with that being said, we look forward to doing more of these. Like I said before, we did Cool World, we just did Last Action Hero. We're going to do more. If you want to check them out, be sure to subscribe and comment below. Follow our Twitter at twitter.com/theturboether. Also check out the Facebook while you're at it. And with that said, see you in the movies. That doesn't make any sense.
Roll with it.